Yet such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. These words are spoken by Elrond at the Council of Rivendell in the Fellowship of the Ring. Lord of the Rings is one of the most beloved tales of heroism and sacrifice, of good versus evil. And it spawned a great many other stories set in this type of narrative: light versus dark, villains versus heroes, good versus evil. But why do these binary narratives resonate so deeply with us that they remain relevant today? In this video, that's what I want to explore: the strengths of binary narratives and what themes they offer the fantasy world builder. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. In a previous video, I discussed the pitfalls of writing fantasy politics, and I argued there that if you're crafting a political fantasy, a story which focuses on politics, you should avoid using a binary narrative. And I still stand by that video. When the focus of your story is politics, you want multiple factions with different shades to them. In political factions, having one side be wholly good and the other side be wholly evil detracts from the complexity that keeps readers invested in who is truly in the right, or if you can even say there is such a thing as being in the right. However, this is a tool for the storyteller who wants to focus on the themes of moral ambiguity, the nature of power, and the other political fantasy themes. And it's just a tool for your belt. In the same way, a binary narrative is a different kind of tool which unlocks different themes for the author. Themes that do not play well with the shades of grey I spoke about in the political fantasy video. So, in this expansion of your authorial tool belt, we'll explore the power of binary narratives and when they work well in fantasy settings. And we'll start our discussion by exploring the simplification of conflict and why that's a good thing. Binary narratives at their core simplify the conflict within a story, making it easier for the audience to grasp the stakes of the plot and align themselves with the characters. By distilling the central struggle into a clear-cut battle between good and evil, these narratives eliminate the ambiguity that can, sometimes, muddle the reader's or the viewer's emotional engagement in the plot. This simplification is not a weakness, but rather a powerful tool that allows the story to focus on other crucial elements, such as character development, thematic exploration, and emotional resonance, without getting bogged down with the complexities of moral ambiguity at the plot level. Take The Lord of the Rings as an example. The story's primary conflict is a straightforward battle between the forces of good, represented by the Lord of the Rings Fellowship and their allies, and the forces of evil, that is to say, Sauron and his allies and minions. This clear-cut division allows the narrative to shine a spotlight on the heroism of ordinary individuals like Frodo and Sam. The simplicity of the good versus evil framework amplifies the bravery of these characters as they face overwhelming odds in their pursuit of having goodness win. The audience is never in doubt about what is at stake. The survival of Middle-earth itself lies in the balance, and this clarity enhances the emotional impact of the characters' sacrifices and struggles. Moreover, the binary conflict in Lord of the Rings enables the story to explore universal themes such as courage, friendship, and the corrupting influence of power. With the moral landscape clearly defined, the narrative can delve into how these themes play out in the lives of its characters. And we will explore more of that when we talk about universal themes later on in this video. It is important to note that though there is no moral ambiguity at the plot level, there is moral ambiguity at the character level. Consider the path of Boromir, son of Gondor. His desire to protect his people and reclaim the glory of Gondor is noble, but it also makes him vulnerable to the corrupting influence of the One Ring. Boromir's internal conflict, his struggle between his duty to Gondor and his duty to the Fellowship, and the seductive power of the ring, adds depth to his character and shows us the struggle of a character figuring out what good actually means in the context of the plot. Boromir's temptation and his eventual fall highlight the very real danger that even the most well-intentioned individuals can be swayed by evil when their fears and desires are manipulated. This introduces a moral dilemma not only for Boromir, but for the entire Fellowship. His actions force the other members to confront the fragility of their mission and the constant threat the ring poses to their unity and moral integrity. And despite his fall, Boromir's story is ultimately redemptive. In his final moments, he recognizes his failure and sacrifices himself to protect Merry and Pippin, proving that the pull of evil can be resisted, even if not without great cost. This moment of redemption underscores the overarching theme of hope and the resilience of the human spirit that runs throughout Lord of the Rings. And it shows that while the broader conflict is between good and evil, individual characters can embody both, making their struggles and triumphs all the more poignant in the context of this morally unambiguous narrative. But nowhere in Boromir's story is the audience confused about what the right course of action is. No one is rooting for Boromir to take the ring to Gondor. Even as we feel for the conflict he is experiencing, we know what action he should take. And that is the power of the simplification of conflict. In a binary narrative, the audience knows what to root for, which can make the story more engaging and satisfying. We know what the characters should do, even when they are tempted to explore other paths and take wrong turnings. And that knowledge helps us remain invested in their journey with the plot as a backdrop and a moral compass to the character arcs and actions. And if you enjoyed this discussion of binary narratives so far, hit the thumbs up button. And let's talk about the second strength of binary narratives, the power of universal themes. Binary narratives are particularly effective at exploring universal themes, those core ideas and values that resonate deeply across different cultures and eras that speak to the human experience. By framing a story as a battle between good and evil, authors and filmmakers can tap into fundamental human experiences and emotions such as hope, courage, sacrifice, and the triumph of good over evil. These themes are not only relatable, but also timeless, making the story accessible to a wide audience. One of the most compelling aspects of binary narratives is their ability to distill complex ideas into a form that is immediately understandable. The clear division between good and evil allows the narrative to focus on exploring these universal themes in a direct and impactful way. For instance, the theme of hope often shines brightest in binary narratives, where characters face seemingly insurmountable odds. In such stories, hope becomes a powerful motivator that drives characters to push forward despite overwhelming adversity. A great example of this is Star Wars: A New Hope, the first movie. The binary struggle between the Rebel Alliance and the Empire is not just about a military conflict. It's about the belief in something larger than oneself. The theme of faith, whether it's faith in the Force or a cause or the hope for a better future, permeates the story of Star Wars. Luke Skywalker's journey from a naive farm boy to a hero of the rebellion is driven by his growing belief in the Force and his role in the fight against the Empire. The simplicity of the good versus evil narrative allows the story to focus on this universal theme of faith, making it a powerful and resonant message for the audience. Similarly, the theme of courage is often at the heart of binary narratives. When the lines between good and evil are clearly drawn, the courage of characters who stand up against evil becomes even more striking. This is evidenced in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe from the Narnia Chronicles, where the Pevensie children stand up against the evil of the White Witch at the behest of Aslan, and they represent the forces of good in this, and the White Witch, of course, the forces of evil. Their courage in facing this very potent threat and tyranny, despite their initial fear and uncertainty, underscores the story's message about the importance of bravery in the face of darkness. Moreover, the triumph of good over evil in binary narratives often serves as a metaphor for the resilience of the human spirit. In these stories, the victory of good is not just a physical or a moral victory, but a reaffirmation of the values that are central to the human existence in the view of the author. It's a reminder that despite the darkness that may exist in the world, there is always the potential for light to prevail. So, from these examples, it should be clear that binary narratives are powerful vehicles for exploring these kinds of universal themes because their simplicity allows for a focused and profound exploration of ideas that are central to the human experience. Whether it's the power of hope, the importance of courage, the nobility of sacrifice, or the inevitable triumph of good over evil, these themes resonate strongly within the clear moral framework of a binary narrative. And that makes such stories deeply impactful and enduring, and it's why we still read these stories. But besides the universal themes, binary narratives can evoke intense emotional and psychological impact on the reader. So let's speak about that next. Binary narratives, with their clear and straightforward delineation between good and evil, are incredibly effective at evoking strong emotional responses in readers and viewers. The simplicity and directness of these narratives allow the audience to quickly grasp the stakes at the high level and then form deep emotional connections with the characters and the story. This emotional engagement is a key reason why binary narratives remain so popular and impactful in storytelling. One of the most significant ways in which binary narratives generate that emotional impact is through their ability to evoke empathy. When the moral lines are clearly drawn, the audience can easily identify with the struggles of the protagonist, who they see to be on the course of good. This identification fosters an emotional investment in the journey of the protagonist and their outcomes, because there is no ambiguity on the audience side that they might be rooting for a villain. For example, in Eragon, the readers are drawn to the emotional turmoil and courage of Eragon as he faces the overwhelming power of Galbatorix. This clear opposition between the protagonist and the antagonist heightens the audience's empathy for Eragon, and it makes his victories feel like their own and his struggles deeply personal. Moreover, the simplicity of the binary narrative allows the emotional highs and lows of the story to resonate more powerfully. The audience is taken on a roller coaster of emotions, from the tension and fear of impending evil to the elation and relief when good prevails. In Star Wars A New Hope, for example, the moment when Luke Skywalker destroys the Death Star is a quintessential high point in the narrative, delivering a powerful emotional payoff to the audience. The clarity of good versus evil conflict ensures that this moment is not just a triumph for the characters and their goals, but also a cathartic experience for the audience, who have been emotionally invested in the Rebel Alliance's struggles from the beginning. But there is also moral dilemmas in binary narratives, albeit in a more straightforward manner than in morally complex stories. These dilemmas, while simpler, still provoke deep thought and emotional responses. For instance, when Han leaves to pay off his debt to the Hutt in Star Wars A New Hope, this represents one of our characters putting self above what is good and right, the temptation away from the correct path. And when Han returns to serve as Luke's rescue from without, for the audience it is a glorious moment of Han overcoming his weakness and choosing the good side of the conflict. And that emotional impact is very high because we know what is the good side to choose. So the binary narrative increases that emotional payoff in overcoming the temptation. And look, please note, I'm not saying these stories are simplistic and without nuance. but their binary moral framework is simplistic, and that allows the character complexity to shine even brighter and draws the audience into a powerful emotional journey, which makes them care about the characters and the outcome of their story. But it's not just the emotional landscape that lends itself to impactful storytelling. Binary narratives also lend themselves to allegorical and symbolic stories. If you've enjoyed the video so far, hit that thumbs up button and let's talk about symbolism and allegory. Allegory. One of the most profound strengths of the binary narratives in fantasy is their ability to symbolize larger philosophical, moral, or religious concepts. By presenting the struggle between good and evil in a clear and accessible way, these stories often serve as allegories for real-world issues. This symbolic depth adds layers of meaning to the narrative, allowing it to resonate with audiences on multiple levels and providing a powerful sense of hope that good can ultimately prevail. Fantasy as a genre lends itself particularly well to allegory because it often operates in worlds that are removed from our own, allowing authors to explore complex ideas without being constrained by the specifics of our reality and the lived experience of people in our world. In these fantastical settings, the binary conflict between good and evil can be used to represent broader philosophical or spiritual battles. For instance, in The Lord of the Ring, the One Ring symbolizes the corrupting influence of power, while the quest to destroy it represents the struggle to resist that corruption. And so this narrative isn't just about the physical journey of Frodo. It's not about marching across the very pretty landscape of New Zealand or the descriptions that Tolkien, put there in his lyrical prose. It is a symbolic exploration of the dangers of absolute power and the moral imperative to reject that power, no matter the cost. In the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, the battle between Aslan and the White Witch is a very clear allegory for the Christian concept of redemption and sacrifice and the power of forgiveness. Aslan's sacrifice and resurrection pretty much directly echo the story of Christ, while the struggle for Narnia's freedom represents the battle for the soul of humanity. This clear distinction between good and evil in this narrative reinforces these allegorical elements and makes the story not just an adventure, but a symbolic journey that reflects these religious concepts of Christianity and the philosophical explorations thereof. Now, I do want to issue a warning here though. For me personally, Lewis, especially in the later books, with his treatment of Susan, very clearly illustrated, for me, a massive flaw in his good versus evil narrative and therefore in the underlying thing he was allegorizing. Susan is essentially condemned to hell for being a normal grown-up person who wants to live a normal grown-up life. Nothing that she does is particularly evil, and yet she's condemned by the books and forgotten by her family when they go to the ultimate Narnia beyond the sea. Now, I'm not going to deconstruct the whole story and character arc here. It's not the right video for that. But personally, I feel that Susan was very poorly treated in the later books. Now, of course, this is an opinion, and other people interpret the books and Susan's treatment differently, and that's fine. That works for them. I'm just raising the point to illustrate that there are pitfalls here that you should be aware of when you're designing these binary narratives, especially around allegories, so that you don't deliver an unintended message. Whatever message you deliver, make sure it's done on purpose and by your design as the author. Anyway, moving on to the final strength of the binary narrative. The binary landscape as a unifying force. In complex political fantasies, an external threat can temporarily simplify the narrative into a binary conflict, uniting otherwise opposing factions and characters. This kind of external danger often presents such a significant risk to the characters that internal conflicts and political rivalries are set aside in favor of a unified front against the common enemy. However, the effectiveness of this unification can vary depending on the story's themes and the characters involved. For an example of this, your mileage may vary with this one. Consider George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. Here, the others, or the White Walkers in the show, serve as that existential threat that theoretically should unify the warring factions of Westeros. But despite this, the noble houses fail to come together due to deep-seated political ambitions, animosities between them, and personal vendettas. Spoilers for the final few seasons of Game of Thrones, but Cersei Lannister genuinely refuses to ally against the White Walkers, prioritizing her own power over the survival of humanity, and this basically exemplifies the failure of the kingdoms of Westeros to unify. And that actually serves to highlight the pervasive flaws in human nature, emphasizing that even in the face of such overwhelming danger, personal conflicts can persist, sometimes to the detriment of all involved. But your mileage may vary, and in contrast, in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, there is a unification against the external threat that does unite the disparate factions. And spoilers for the final book of that trilogy, The Hero of Ages, where the world faces an apocalyptic threat in the form of ruin, a godlike entity whose very nature is to bring about the end of the world. And as ruin's influence grows, natural disasters and widespread chaos increases, and it becomes very clear to the characters that they must unite, otherwise they will not survive. And so an unprecedented alliance between various groups that have been at odds even in the earlier parts of the series results. The nobility were oppressing the Scar at the beginning, and that led into a revolution driven by the Scar and the overthrow of the High Ruler. And yet, at the end, there is a alliance between the Scar and the nobility and the characters as they realize that their internal conflicts will doom them. And so this final confrontation with ruin is therefore not just a battle against the individuals, against a powerful adversary, but it's also a showcase of how humanity can come together and prevail against such darkness. How factions that did fight against each other can set aside their differences in the face of horror to preserve what remains of their world. I do want to caveat this use of the good versus evil binary narrative. If you're not careful, this can come across as a very cynical alliance of convenience. Now, if that is your aim with a story, it could be a fantastic subversion of the trope. But if you're not planning to subvert the trope, if you do actually want a binary narrative at the end, make sure that your factions and characters change enough during the story that it makes sense for them to come together in unity and truly oppose the evil threatening their world. So, those are basically my strengths of the binary narrative. I hope that I have fairly represented the binary narrative strengths for you as a storyteller. And if you want to use the binary narrative, that this video will help you in exploring those concepts using these 5 strengths. Simplification of conflict and allowing moral ambiguity to shine only in the characters. The power of universal themes and allowing them to shine in this backdrop. The increased emotional impact, the symbolic and allegorical power, and the use of binary narratives as a unifying force. What do you think? Where would you use binary narratives? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like what I do here and you want to support the channel financially, you can join the channel right here on YouTube, and for the price of a cup of coffee a month, you can enjoy all kinds of really cool perks, like member-only live streams and shout-outs like this one to Aya, Tiffin and Dylan of the Build It in Wood level, and Lupex, Katie and Tony of the Build It in Stone level of the membership tiers. However, please don't feel obligated to support the channel financially. You can also show your support just by watching another video. Since you enjoyed this video, maybe check out my video on creating protagonists in fantasy stories. And I will see you soon for another video from Just in Time Worlds, where we build what we need when we need it.